Greetings, welcome to the Diabetic Mogul podcast. On this podcast, we will offer standard and recommended practice of not only managing your diabetes home, but how you can get involved in advocating for proper access to healthcare and bringing opportunities within the diabetes online community. It's Tino, a patient advocate and a certified diabetes educator.
I'm Hona. I'm a recently graduated medical doctor. Together, we want to raise awareness, open a discussion about diabetes, share ideas, thoughts, different perspectives, and overall create a safe environment for everyone who needs to express his or her thoughts.
We'll be hosting a series of podcast episodes from people living with diabetes, caregivers, healthcare providers, researchers, and we encourage you to get involved, get engaged, and come up together to create the change that we need. Welcome to the Diabetic Mogul. Everyone watching, welcome. Miro, so I think I would let you introduce yourself. Over to you.
Thank you, Tino, for your kind invitation, having me here on your podcast. I'm Miroslava Calegari, coming from Slovakia and living in Italy. I'm a caregiver of small girl, now already 7, so not so small anymore, living with type 1 diabetes. I'm the part also of DDoC community. That's why I know you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast and also for honoring our invitation. Usually people think that this podcast is only for people living with diabetes or healthcare professionals. We also depend on our caregivers. So if you briefly describe a day in the life of a toddler's caregiver like yourself.
Yes, I would say the day in the life of toddler's caregiver may vary a lot. It's also very different if you are new in with diabetes or already inside for a while. And it depends a lot kind of person you are and the possibilities you have to manage diabetes too. I still remember 2 years ago when my daughter was diagnosed at age of 5 in Slovakia. We were facing COVID pandemic and the world was just closed, but this was also the opportunity for me to study a lot, even if I had another advantage about my healthcare professional background, as my original profession was a general nurse. So when I knew about diagnosis of my daughter, I was not scared, worried that I will not be able to control her disease. I just want to underline that even if the caregivers have at their disposal the best technologies or the fastest insulin, that doesn't mean to live free from diabetes. And in my opinion, taking care of the children growing with diabetes is one of the most challenging therapies ever.
Amazing response. We need people like you. There's so many changes that people would have to do to make sure that they're going to give the best care to their children who would have probably gotten diagnosed. Maybe there was no history of diabetes in your family. And so many people do get affected in different ways. For some, even the parents, they might even be in a denial phase. So what can you say, or how can you say diabetes has affected you? I know in a positive way, it has affected you. You had to do some learning so that you could better manage your daughter's diabetes. So what can you tell us to the people that will be watching?
Yes. The first thing when we faced a diagnosis of our daughter with my husband, our common decision was the one that this won't stop our lives and dreams of our child, whatever the costs would be. And of course, this is easier said than lived. I can't say nothing changed at all, but I have additional duties to think about for a while until my daughter will leave me to help. This means changing her insulin pump every 3 days or CGM every 10 days, taking care that we have in stock always enough things that are helping us in our daily management, and having backup solutions always, and backup solutions for backup solutions. Last not least is to follow my daughter in her own way and find balance in how to interface gently with her decisions if needed, without additional burden she probably has to face living with this lifelong condition.
Thank you for being amazing, the mom that you are and a great caregiver that you are. I can relate because I've met you and I know you as a person who has been exposed to these amazing, biggest diabetes conferences. Now you know so many things that are happening in other countries, how people do manage their diabetes, especially for people living with diabetes, and how the decisions or your management skills, how they have to change from the stories that you hear from the people that you have met so far. So what can you say is missing in terms of care in the Slovakian community or Italy?
What I think that is really missing the most in Slovakia but elsewhere is the knowledge and education. It was Elliot Jocelyn who said what I really agree a lot, but I prefer to use edited version by our common friend, diabetic survivor. The people living with diabetes who know the most live the longest. And I would add that caregivers who know the most live the most peacefully. But what is the most important, in my opinion, that they leave their children to live their best lives, focusing on their childhood despite living with diabetes. Of course, this is not possible in a society where you struggle with your daily life. If you don't have a food to put on the table, this is the first issue. Then, when speaking about managing diabetes, if you don't have access to insulin because it's simply not affordable, if you don't have enough stripes to check your blood sugar, access to the technologies, it's still very limited, especially for the small children, the newly diagnosed ones. These are some of the struggles that also people in Slovakia are facing today.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Now that you're a person who has both lived in Slovakia and Italy, what can you say are the common health risks in these two countries?
I would say the biggest difference, first, in my opinion, is access to knowledge of healthcare professionals. This is based also on the national research limits, comparing small, less developed, and bigger countries. The second is access and affordability of people living with diabetes to medical devices and technologies. But the reality in Italy varies a lot based on the region where the person lives. For example, an insulin pump is a part of minimum assistance or a basic right. There are no obstacles in my current knowledge by Italian law to limit access to those devices. But the reality of people experiences is very different. It still depends most on the healthcare professional you meet and their personal opinion or will to propose you the insulin pump. While in Slovakia, by current regulation, you have to wait at least 6 months to be maybe eligible for insulin pump therapy. And then you face all the problems Italians do. But I can only speak from my perspective of person living in North Italy region. I would say that common risks are similar to those present in many other countries. It was said also at ATTD by Marisa Hitchcock-Town, and today I think on social networks by Partakar, while speaking about diabetes dictating or what individuals must do to get access to the technologies. And Parta reminds no one has to prove anything to get access. Be a guide, not a gatekeeper. And I cannot agree more. The regulations and our mindset needs to be updated accordingly.
as a person who was not attending the ATTD conference, I was seeing all these tweets that you make. I resonate so much with it. I relate with what these people are saying. That was just amazing and beautiful. And thank you so much for taking it home, paying it forward so that people that are not even attending these conferences that do follow you will be able to learn from you and whatever that is that you're sharing. So thank you so much for being a powerful voice along with the other DDoC voices that were doing this thing that you are doing. Usually I know the DDoC voices dominate on almost every conference with the tweets that you make. So thank you so much. And also even for sharing your own perspective and highlighting that this is just your own perspective from your own knowledge, what you know, what you think about these two things. As a caregiver that you are, trying to help the child that is living with diabetes, at times they might be stubborn, but you have to stand your ground to make sure that whatever that is they're going to do is going to be beneficial and lead a better quality life. So like, what resource do you say is the most helpful as a parent of a child who is living with type 1 diabetes?
I have to admit that our situation is not a common situation. And when my daughter was diagnosed, there were no options for us to set up Mia on an insulin pump without having to wait for a long time. And I tried to search for some time healthcare professional help in different European countries. I was decided I won't give up. But then I found my tribe in a looping community, and I started to follow mostly Californian loopers and parents of little loopers. These were and so far are the most important and helpful source for me in managing diabetes of my child. The second life-changing or life understanding source, if we can say so, was the DDoC international community of all of you guys. You're living examples of being an adult living with diabetes were just the most helpful than any book, course, or education that I could ever achieve. But if I should share my opinion on where to search for the resources, I would say your healthcare team, if you are lucky to have one, should be the first source you trust and you can rely on whenever you need. Then there is diabetes community everywhere around you. Don't stay alone. Don't hesitate to ask for peer support. Just pay attention to medical advices because your diabetes will vary from others. You should consult all changes of therapy with your healthcare professional.
I hope that this will help inspire other caregivers that will be listening, because I know at times or at first, even if their child has had diabetes for 5 years, they're still in a denial, but they need to be engaged and making sure that they can have conversations with the healthcare professionals that look after their children so that we can achieve a balance in everything that we have to do and make sure that everybody is not being left out. And always, these cases, they're different. When I got diagnosed, I was in school. That's where I spent most of my times, my days, my hours, everything. I know I had told my friends how they should be able to assist me if I had probably been in a hypo. Only a few people know. But at college, yes, they knew everything. But I don't know if they would have been helpful had I been in any emergency, so to say. In your case, can you say that you have these amazing support from the family members? And do you think, let's say, for example, you're not even there, you travel the world. Anyone else in your family who knows about diabetes that can really help me?
Of course, for the emergencies, there were or is some basic knowledge also in our bubble, let's say in the school or family. I cannot say I don't have support at all, but probably is not the support you imagine. When I have chosen the system for my daughter's diabetes management. I was doing it with focus that she will be able to grow in complete confidence, competence, and independence by herself. She was already on her way to doing so, and I just didn't want her to change due to diagnosis. What I understood very quickly was that people around us are missing knowledge and about diabetes, type 1 diabetes especially, are having experiences with old approach to disease. And therefore, there are many of them scared too. This applies to strangers, but family members too. And it takes so much time to change and energy. I knew I won't alone change things quickly as I would like to. So the easiest way was just to let my daughter take care of herself and give her tools and guidance on how to do it when we are not with her. Of course, for emergency, it's very different. So everyone knows that the sugar will not be harmful in any case she would need.
I just hope that almost every other kid would have a caregiver with such passion as you have, who is willing enough to learn, travel the world, to meet other people living with diabetes and learn from them, discuss with them. That's great. Thank you so much for being an inspiration for so many others that will come after you at the DDoc, that will join and attend conferences like you do. At DDoc, we know that we usually say what we wish you knew and all the symposium that we usually speak about. Now, listening from a caregiver like yourself, what do you wish the healthcare providers knew?
No matter how addicted to your profession are, and I can see it and admire every single one of you. We have the possibility to know, listen, speak, or share, also thanks to DDoc Voice Scholarship Program. You will never really know what does it mean and how does it feel to live with diabetes, or to love or grow someone with diabetes, unless you experience it yourself. Listen and learn from your colleagues that are living with diabetes and from your patients and their families. They are the best source you can find in order to help you to perform your profession in the best interests of those whom you care of. And I would like also industries from the field across the world to know about it too.
Podcast is international. You mentioned something. You said that you have found your tribe. You're part of the California Loopers. You're part of the DDoc. These are all international diabetes communities that you're part of. How can other caregivers that will listen to this, how can they get involved in these international diabetes spaces and get the assistance that they need for motivation, encouragement, and for advices themselves?
As I mentioned before, and you said, the impact on my life meeting DDoc community was just enormous. I truly wish for every single parent that is now terrified about his child's life out there to live this experience I lived. I really encourage you all to apply for the scholarship that is open, I think, 3 times per year, and to follow DDoc and current voices like us, where you can learn when and how to do so.
Explain to us about the open loop source community, open loop, closed loop, and you have an experience in some of those technologies because that's what Mia is using. So explain to us what it means to be a guarantee for your child using an open source automated insulin delivery system, and how is it contributed to your diabetes management?
Open source automated insulin delivery systems are not something you can buy or get by prescription. They are not produced or sold anywhere in the world. They are not CE marked or FDA approved. However, the algorithm and source code made available as open source and are publicly available. Also, thanks to research supported by European Commission and with results presented recently by Dr. Katarina Braun on ISPAT 2022, her colleagues and the other researchers on Open Project Closing Conference held in Berlin just before ATTD, there is already clear evidence of safety and efficiency of using those systems, all ages and for all people living with diabetes. But for the facts I mentioned, there is still a need to specify that the use of those systems relies on individual decisions and responsibility, even if should be consulted and supported by healthcare professional. And how open source contribute to my daughter's diabetes management, I would like just repeat the words written by the legend of open source community that left us in this world recently, Katie D. Simon. When she wrote it, it changed my and my daughter's life in so many ways. Things that were said to be impossible suddenly became possible. I just would add that it was not suddenly, but thanks to an amazing community and people behind, as Katie was and many others continue to be. That's why I pay it forward.
Thank you so much for being an eloquent voice, using your voice, your experiences, things that you know and things that you have seen in the diabetes community, your encouragement to people that they should join and be part of this community. It's for their own benefit, right? Because there's nothing about us without us, and we're not waiting. We need to continuously pay it forward. You're living under that mantra from the DDoC voices. You pay it forward. You're now encouraging other people to join the network too, which is fantastic. So thank you so much for being part of this podcast. And we hope that whoever is going to listen to this would draw the inspiration from everything that you have shared, the motivation, get involved and get engaged in this diabetes community so that we can help create the change that this world needs. If you have any last words of advice.
I just want to thank to you, Tino, for having me and for all your kind words. To just repeat to everyone watching, listening, to don't hesitate and join us.